Hello and welcome to Kempton Math. This is Algebra 2, Unit 1, Lesson 1. We're going to work on some practice questions. We're going to rewrite each expression as a polynomial in standard form. So the first 4 questions we have are just adding and subtracting. So when you add and subtract, all you have to do is just combine like terms. So like terms are anything that have the same exponent. So x squared and x squared. So we're going to go ahead and add, and that becomes 5x squared. Next we have negative 5x plus x. So those are like terms, and there's a 1 in front of this. So negative 5 plus 1 becomes a negative 4x. And then lastly, we have the 6 that's all by itself. Question number 2. We have like terms, 2x squared. Now we have a 3x squared, but because there's a minus sign there, we're going to go ahead and distribute this negative to everything after it. So distribute just means to give that negative to everything. So we're going to actually rewrite this as 2x squared minus 4x. And now this is going to change this positive 3x squared to a negative 3x squared. It's going to change the positive x to a negative x, and it's going to change the positive 1 to a negative 1. So essentially it just changes everything after it. So now we're going to go ahead and add like terms. So 2x squared minus 3x squared. It's really 2 minus 3, which is a negative 1, x squared. Next we have a negative 4x and a negative x. So negative 4 minus 1 is negative 5x. And then we have that minus 1 after it. Okay, moving on to question 3. We're going to distribute twice here. We're going to go ahead and multiply the 2 times both of these, and we're also going to distribute that negative to both terms after it. So this becomes a negative 6x squared plus 8x, and then this changes x squared to a negative, and it changes that 5x to positive. All right, let's add these together. I have a negative 6 and a negative 1 that adds to negative 7x squared. I have a positive 8x and a positive 5x, which is a positive 13x. And lastly, we're going to take this negative 3 and we're going to multiply it by both terms. So we're going to keep that. This becomes negative 3x squared, and this becomes negative 3x. All right, we only have 1x squared, so we're going to go ahead and put that first. That's called standard form. It just puts the highest exponent first. Then we have a 5x and a minus 3x. That gives us a 2x, and then we have that 6 at the end. All right, so those are the 4 practice problems. Down here, we are going to do some Regents questions, and we are asked which questions are Algebra 1 and which questions are Algebra 2. So let's see what you think here. Question 5, they give you A, which is 3x squared plus 5x minus 6. They give you B, and then they ask you A minus B. So it's very important that you keep this minus sign in between them. So we have A, I'm going to keep a minus sign, and now we have a B. Now the reason for that is because we know that a minus sign in front is going to change everything after it. So we're going to keep everything at first. Some teachers like to think of this as a keep, change, change. Okay, and now we're going to distribute that negative. So a negative and a negative becomes a positive 2x squared. Again, that's going to change this to a positive 6x, and it's going to change that to a negative 7. So now let's go ahead and add our like terms. 3x squared plus 2x squared, that's going to give us a 5x squared. I have a 5x plus a 6x, which is going to be a positive 11x. And lastly, I have a negative 6 and a negative 7. When I add those together, I'm going to get negative 13. So was this Algebra 1 or was this Algebra 2? This was Algebra, I'm sorry, just kidding. This is an Algebra 1 question. Okay, next question. Subtract 5x squared plus 2x minus 11 from 3x squared plus 8x minus 7. Express your result is a trinomial. Tri means 3, so we're just going to have 3 terms at the end. All right, the from is a little bit confusing, so I'm just going to give you an example. If I asked you to take 1 from 3, take 1 from 3, would you get negative 2? No, the reason why is because technically when you take 1 from 3, you actually do the 3 minus 1 first. So in this case, we actually have to write this first, and then we're going to subtract the first polynomial. So 3x squared plus 8x minus 7 minus, and again, I have to make sure that I put this in parentheses because I know that everything after it is going to change. So now I have 3x squared plus 8x minus 11. This is going to change to a negative, this is going to change to a negative, and this is going to change to a positive. All right, let's add our like terms. 3x squared minus 5x squared, that's going to get us a negative 2x squared. I have a 8x minus 2x, that's going to give us a 6x. And lastly, I have a negative 7 plus 11, which is going to give us a 4. All right, was it Algebra 1 or Algebra 2? This was another Algebra 1 question. All right, moving on, we only have one more question. This question is a word question. So Fred is given a rectangular piece of paper. If the length of Fred's piece of paper is represented by 2x minus 6 and the width is represented by 3x minus 5, then the paper has a total area represented. So this is kind of introducing us into our next topic, which is going to be multiplication, because area of a rectangle is length times width. So essentially here we're going to be multiplying 2x minus 6 times 3x minus 5. So notice that there's no sign in between. When there's no sign in between, that represents multiplication. Now a lot of my students here like to use what we call the box method. So you're going to set up one on the top and one on the bottom, and it doesn't matter, just always make sure that the sign is in front. So like the 6 is a negative and the 5 is a negative. And now we're going to multiply. So the first box, we're going to multiply the numbers, 3 times 2, and x times x is x squared. The next box, we're going to multiply a negative 5 times 2x. I like to think of this as just smushing them all together. Next box, we have a negative 6 and a 3x. I'm going to smush them all together. And lastly, that negative 6 and negative 5 is going to be a positive 30. These two terms in the middle are going to be alike. So when we write this out, we're going to have a 6x squared. That negative 10x and that negative 18x is going to combine to negative 28x. And then I have plus 30. And lastly, was this an Algebra 1 or an Algebra 2 question? This was also an Algebra 1 question. Thanks for joining us.